Hi, this is Peter Russell of University of Story. I am a story doctor in Hollywood. I also teach at UCLA and Pepperdine. But at my own school, University of Story, you can find what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is television, because the television market is insane right now. I tell my students you are in the luckiest people in the world to be working in entertainment today, because there are so many hungry mouths in the television world. There is the network, there is the cable, there is the internet platform. We've gone from 200 scripted shows every year to over 400 in just 5 years. So you're in an insanely golden age of television. So we're going to talk about TV. Now, 80% of my business 5 years ago was movies, and I still do story doctoring for movies, but 80% of my business now as a story doctor is for television. Why is this? Well, television is different from movies, but all the patterns and secrets that I learned in my career as a story doctor for movies work in television. And we're going to see that in a brilliant story, pilot of Breaking Bad tonight. I want to break down the pilot episode of Breaking Bad, probably in a way you've never seen, so that you understand, if you're writing an hour drama, just how it's structured and what the brilliance of this story is. Now, Breaking Bad is, let's logline Breaking Bad. Now, a logline in movies is a statement of how a hero changes and heals. But in a television show, a logline is different. In a television show, a logline is simply the hero's goals and the obstacles in his way. What's the difference between these two? It's really critical. In a movie, you're watching because you want to see the hero change. He can either get worse or he can get better, but he's changing. He's either healing or ripping open a core wound. In television, a hero doesn't change. Everything changes but the characters in TV. But what does change is the character reveals new aspects of himself. And we're going to see in Breaking Bad today that the hero in Breaking Bad's pilot reveals new aspects of himself. I also want to tell you that in a television pilot, it's the only time in television that your hero can change. By the end of this pilot, Walter White has become what he's going to pretty much be for the next 7 years, a drug-dealing murderer. He's going to change marginally from now on out, but his big change happens in the pilot. So, what is that? Well, I always want to ask several questions when we create a television show, and these are questions you should ask yourself about your own show. First of all, your logline's critical. Let me give you the logline for Breaking Bad. A high school chemistry teacher dying of cancer teams with a former student to manufacture and sell crystal meth to secure his family's future. Now, that's not a movie logline. In a movie logline, you'd want to know what happened to him, right? What happens? Does he do it? Does he not? Does he heal? Does he stop being a meth dealer? No, not in television. Television is simply about goals and the obstacles in the way. Because remember, we're telling a story that takes place over 100 to 150 episodes, quite different from movies, although the same rules are used. This is a thriller, and all my movie thriller rules that I should give you in University of Story's thriller lecture for movies also work in television. I have a television lecture at universityofstory.com as well. What does this logline mean? Well, when you're creating a television show, actually, the creator of this television show, who's brilliant, Vince Gilligan, was actually, he says, sitting around unemployed when he thought of this idea. He was talking to his collaborator and he said, you know what, we're broke, we need money, maybe we should sell drugs. And from that kernel of an idea, they started breaking this logline. Now, there's 8 questions I love to ask in television. One is, what's the world of your show? The world of this show is Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, how the hell is that interesting? I'll tell you why. Because it's literally Albuquerque. They shot it there. And if you know Hollywood, you know that when they make a middle-class world, they usually put it up on a set in Riverside, and it's carpentered, and it looks like every other set you've ever seen. But if you actually shoot in the place you are telling about, you have a huge advantage. The French call it cinéma vérité. We just call it, hey, we got the budget to go on location. But it's the same thing, because it's real. You really see the real middle-class world of Albuquerque, and it's cool because it's so not cool, yes? What's the premise here? Well, what is a premise in television? It's a guy who's going to be selling drugs, a a meek, mild-mannered guy who's suddenly going to become a drug dealer. That's a cool premise. What's the setting, Albuquerque? What's the theme? Well, I'll tell you, a theme in television is really important. It's not like in high school English where your teacher asks you, what's the theme of Julius Caesar? And you throw a spitball at her. The theme here is power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts. And my father used to say, never corner a weak man. You will regret it. Walter White is a weak guy given power, and we see what that does to him. It's a great theme. The next thing we ask in television is, what's the hook? Why do we want to come back for 150 episodes? We don't need to do that in a movie, but we do in television. What is the hook here? Well, what do you think? The hook is watching Walter White go from mild-mannered geek to drug-dealing murderer. How far is Walter going to go? That's a great question. We're going to see it every week. The next thing is a genre, which is thriller. We're going to talk about that as we go through this pilot episode. I'm going to break it all down for you. You're going to be using these hidden patterns when you're writing your television show, no matter what genre it is. There's 25 television genres. They all have their own patterns. If you don't know them, you're going to get lost. The next thing is the character, situation, or questions that's going to keep us watching for 7 years. What is the question here? Well, it's an unresolvable conflict or dilemma. Now, what do I mean by that? You don't need it in movies. You have to have it in TV. What's an unresolvable dilemma? It is a question that will never be satisfactorily answered. Okay? In Walter's case, it's this. Walter wants to save his family. That's why he becomes a drug dealer, to make money. But in doing that, he destroys his family. That's unresolvable. It's called irony by hipsters. They misuse it. But unresolvable dilemmas keep you coming back to a television show. You don't need it in movies. What's the unresolvable conflict in, say, Mad Men? Don Draper is a traditionalist family man who's a big, great provider. He's also a completely amoral marriage wrecker. Unresolvable dilemma. We'll watch him for 100 episodes and he never resolves it. Yes? What's the unresolvable dilemma in Game of Thrones? It's this. How can good people prevail as leaders when power corrupts absolutely? How come good people never can become in charge? What is it? It's unresolvable. Around the world you see crappy leaders. Why? What we're thirsting for is a good leader. But the very qualities that make you a leader can preclude you from being a good one. So what's the unresolvable dilemma in your story? The next thing we need are characters who surprise us. In television, you must be surprised. Remember, characters don't change. They just surprise. When Janice shoots Richie in that great episode of The Sopranos, and she kills him right there at the dinner table with a pistol, we're shocked. We're surprised. We're titillated. Do we think Janice has changed? No. Has Richie changed? Well, he's dead. But no, he's not going to change anymore. He's dead. But they both surprised us. Richie surprises us by hitting her for the first time. She surprises us by killing him with a pistol. Big surprise. This is how television works. Finally, what is a character's superpower? At the beginning of a television pilot, they are misusing it. Don Draper's misusing his seductive abilities at the beginning of the first episode of Mad Men. Tyrion Lannister's misusing his abilities at the first episode of Game of Thrones. What is Walter White doing in Breaking Bad? He's misusing his genius for chemistry. He's misusing his genius for being incredibly smart. He's wasting his life as a really bad high school teacher doing nothing else. He's going to be using that superpower by the end of the episode in a really malevolent way, but boy, is he using it. The next thing you need are structure and dialogue. We're going to talk about that as we go along. Now, by the way, guys, just one other thing about theme. What do you want to say in your story? Do you just want a house in Malibu? Is that why you're writing your television show? Because if that's the only reason you're writing it, maybe you'll succeed, but it won't be a very strong story. Why is that? What's the truth about life you want to get across in your story? There is a truth about life in Breaking Bad. What do you want to say about life? This isn't just some stupid exercise. It's your passion. Because remember, theme is about the truth you want to tell about life. What do you want to say? What do you want to say? Nothing? Well, think about it. You do want to say something. Vince Gilligan is saying that power really corrupts. Absolutely corrupts, especially weak people. What's the theme in Orange is the New Black, by the way? A great show by Genji Cohan. What's the theme there? What's the problem in that show? It's that Piper doesn't have a strong sense of herself. That means she can go with girls, she can go with guys, she can betray them both. She doesn't know who she is. You gotta know who you are. That's a great theme too. In Sons of Anarchy, another fabulous show, the writer of the show, Kurt Sutter, wants to tell us you're doomed if you don't have a good mentor. Do you not have a good mentor? Have you not had a good mentor in your life? Are your parents shitty? Crappy, sorry. If they're crappy, you're in trouble. You better find a mentor. That's the whole reason Kurt Sutter wrote Sons of Anarchy, even if he tells you it wasn't. So we need to understand the theme in this show because it's in every page of the show. So what do you really believe? What are you passionate about? Now, what's the hook in this show? Well, we already know that. So I want to start walking through this story to see the hook. You ever seen a show called Man in the High Castle? What's the hook there? Will our protagonist succeed in throwing off Japan and Germany from America? Making a Murderer, what's the hook there? Will the villains manage to frame this guy for murder twice? Orange is the New Black, will Piper ever figure out his sexuality? Breaking Bad, it's how far is Walter gonna go? You're gonna see that in this pilot. It's really, really important, right? So let's take a look at it. And what I suggest you do is you pull up this pilot, both as a script and as a television episode, and you study it as we go along. And as you do that, I'm going to be breaking it down. So I'll give you a chance now to buy that class, buy that movie from Amazon. There's literally dozens of ways to get this. And then we're going to do that. We're going to look at both of those things. So let's start out with Breaking Bad. And as we start out, what do we start out with? We start out with a cold open. A cold open is just the first 5 minutes of a show. No titles, just right into the show. And structurally, we have the first and the second most important storyline in the entire pilot posed in this cold open. Now, what is a storyline question? It is the central question of your story. What's your storyline about? What's your movie about? What's your television show about? What, if you had to ask yourself, what is my television show about? What would you say? What would your log line be? Think of it right now. I bet you have some trouble doing that. You go, well, it's about a girl who's an albino and she is being chased. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. No, it's about the corruption of a society. Wait a minute, no, it's about... So guys, I urge you to try to log line your story. What is the most important part of your television show? What is the question you want to see answered in the pilot and maybe throughout the entire season's run of your show? Okay, what is it? In Mad Men, it's, will Don Draper succeed in not being a villainous adulterer in his private life? Will he let his commercial success heal him? Yes, that's the A storyline for the pilot, and it's the A storyline for the entire run of the show. For Game of Thrones, the A story logline is, which family will win? Because we need to unite everyone in order to fight the White Walkers. That's the A story logline, and it's for the pilot, and it's the A story logline for the entire run of the show. Yes? All 7 or 10 or 15 years, whatever it's going to be. So you need to have, in an hour drama, at least 4 different storylines. We call them the A, B, C, D. Sometimes you have 6 more. Gingy Cohan in Orange is the New Black can handle 12. But these 4 storylines alternate in a very particular pattern. And you need to go to my lecture or some other lecture on University of Story. I have a television lecture that shows you how these 4 storylines alternate in all hour-long dramas, no matter how cool you are, no matter what a hipster you are. David Lynch has to use these patterns, probably unwillingly, but every great creator uses these same patterns of story. Why? Because it's a way to entertain the audience. Television is more complex than movies. We need to have more storylines than we do in a movie. Movies usually have only 2 storylines. Television can have up to 10. And an hour drama alternates them in each act in a very specific way. I'm going to show you how that's done in Breaking Bad. The A storyline in Breaking Bad, I'm just going to tell you right now, is this. Will Walter White become a badass drug dealer? That's it. That's the A question. And by the way, if you have a 4-act chart box, which every television production company uses, or maybe 5, Writers like 4, producers like 6 because they can sell more commercials. You will have 7 little boxes, and each one of those boxes is a beat, and there are 7 in the first act, 7 in the second act, 7 in the third, and 7 in the fourth, because you have 28 beats in an hour drama. And the A storyline takes up from 14 to 16 of those little boxes. The B story takes up to 6 of those little boxes, maybe 8. The C takes up 3 to 4, and the D can take up 2 or 3. Why? Because the A storyline is the most important. And we often open and close our acts on our A storylines. Now, guys, I know this sounds complex. You can learn it in my lecture. You can learn it somewhere else. You better learn it, because that's how pilots are written. So we open up in the cold open of Breaking Bad with this RV racing through the desert, with this middle-aged guy wearing nothing but baggy underwear and Costco glasses and a gas mask. Why, by the way, are we riveted by this? It's nothing particularly interesting. It's because we're seeing that he drives badly and he almost crashes over and over and over again. That's called good news, bad news, and a ticking clock. Is he going to crash? And these suspense techniques are used in every single television show and every single movie that's any good ever. Hitchcock invented a lot of them. I just saw North by Northwest for the first time the other night. I'm sorry, I should have seen it years ago. And he uses these techniques in every scene. So Gilligan does too. This RV finally crashes. But as it does, we're seeing Walter White in these baggy pants jumping out of the RV. Now, what's riveting about this guy? He's dressed in cheap clothes, and he's not in good shape, and he's wearing BVDs that cost $3. Why are we interested in him? Because he's real. An actor, given this role, would have worked out for 6 months, gotten really great abs and lats, and jumped out of the RV. Hey, here I am. Walter is an everyman, and he's got 2 bodies in his car, and a guy behind the passenger seat with a gas mask on. He climbs out of the RV. He puts his pants on, he retrieves his pants, and then we hear what? A siren. What is the siren? There's a siren coming. The siren is a ticking clock. The cops are coming. So the A storyline is, will Walter become a badass drug dealer? What's in the RV? 2 bodies, a bunch of chemicals. But now he grabs a video camera and he tearfully records a farewell to his family. And as he does, he says, "This is not for the police. I'm speaking to my family now." That is the B storyline. Remember, the A and the B storyline alternate in the cold open. The B storyline here is, will Walt take care of his family? And by speaking to this camera, it looks like he's doing just that. And what does he say? I love you. There are things people are going to tell you about me. They're wrong. I'm not a criminal. I wanted to take care of you. That's the B storyline. Then the sirens get louder. Walter takes a gun from his underwear, steps up to the road, points the pistol right at the road, and stands there while the siren gets loud. Boom! End of cold open. That's a great cliffhanger, and it's a ticking clock, and it doesn't get resolved, and we go to the credits. So what have we seen in the cold open? A story, B story, back to A story. That's a great open. Now, guys, in Act 1, where do we go? To a middle-class house at 5 a.m. and a loser. Because Walt's in bed with his wife in a terrible, shabby little vinyl-papered bedroom. But it's not poor. Guys, Hollywood shows poor people really well. They show rich people really well. What they have trouble with are showing middle-class people as they really live. Walter and his wife, Skylar, are unsuccessful, but they're not poor. Walt sighs, he wakes up, he throws off the cover, his pajamas are clean but they're synthetic and cheap. He exercises on this little Stairmaster that's broken. He doesn't give a crap about his life. And now suddenly we see on the wall in this really loser place a plaque that says in 1985 Walt was gonna get a Nobel Prize for nuclear chemistry. What does that tell us? Remember I said that a hero is misusing his superpower at the beginning of the story. How is Walt misusing his superpower? We don't know yet. We know he's not using it here because he's such a loser. What happened to Walter? We want to know. Now, when we go to breakfast, there's the breakfast in the breakfast nook, and we meet his happily henpecked wife. What happens to a woman when the guy she's with is a failure? What does a woman do, usually, if she's with the guy? What does she do? Well, in this case, Skylar overmothers him. She's trying to do everything she can to help him out. She probably holds his hand while they watch self-improvement videos at night, hoping he's going to finally step up to the plate. But this is Walt's 50th birthday, by the way, and they also get really angry. She's had affairs. She's tried to leave him, but she can't. She's tied to the guy. She's going to be tied to him for 7 years. This is also his 50th birthday. And she gives him a plate full of soy bacon that spells out 50. And he looks at it and goes, "What is this stuff? It's not real." And she says, "It's soy bacon. You won't taste the difference." Everything about this scene shows us what? That he's a loser and she's trying to not be panicked and disappointed at what a loser he's turned out to be. She's also visibly pregnant. So the bacon is plastic. The world is plastic. And now here comes their son, Walt Jr., who is disabled. That's not an accident. He comes into the room on his crutches, and he is a great kid, but he's disabled. And when Skylar criticizes him for being late, he says, "There's no hot water again." And Walter and Skylar look down at the table because why is there no hot water? Because they can't afford a hot water heater. Everything in the scene is about how it's disappointing. And so she tells him to eat the bacon, eat the veggie bacon. Now they go to the school. Even the car he drives is a vomit green Pontiac Aztec. The class disses him. There's an alpha male couple in there that won't pay attention to his lecture. We're still in the B storyline, which is, can Walt take care of his family? That's the B storyline question. The answer is no. He cannot take care of his family. Not at all. This gorgeous couple makes out in the back. When he tells them to stop, they just diss him. And then we see Walt go to his second job, which is working at a car wash. And not only is he working at a car wash, but his boss now tells him, "Walter, I'm shorthanded today. Go out and do wipe downs." Walter now has to go from behind the cash register to wiping down a car. And guess whose car he wipes down? That gorgeous alpha male couple from the high school. Now they take pictures of him, laugh at him for being a car cleaner, and put them on Instagram. Oh my God, Walter White is washing cars. Walt White is being humiliated again and again and again, and it ends with a surprise birthday party where we see his ultimate humiliation, but we also return to the A storyline. What is it? Walt's brother-in-law, Hank, who is a DEA agent. And by the way, guys, if you want to make an anti-hero sympathetic, surround him with bigger a-holes than he is. Hank is a blowhard who has made fun of Walt for years, and today he does the same thing. He steals Walt's beer and he says, "Walt, you got a brain the size of Wisconsin. We're not going to hold that against you. Ha ha, come here, buddy." He drinks Walt's beer and shows his gun to everybody, right? Not subtle. The kid handles the gun. "Oh, Dad, this is such a big gun." "Yeah, it's a big gun. They give it to men." Walt's just this shrinking little violet in the corner like he's been for 15 years while Hank bloviates. That's the way it's been. That's the way it's always going to be. But now we return to the A story, which is this. On the television, while they all watch, there's Hank busting a drug dealer, and there's a pile of cash. And Walt, who's been in the corner with his beer, slumped over, sees the cash, and his eyes light up. And he says to Hank, "Hank, how much money is that?" Hank says, "Well, about 80,000. "Really, is that a lot?" "Nah, nothing. That's nothing. We get that every day. Why don't you come with me on a ride along? About to get some excitement in your life." And Walt says, "No, I can't do that." Now, we go back to the B storyline. Can Walt take care of his family? And it's his birthday. So his wife tries to give him a hand job, and Walter can't get an erection. He can't take care of his family. He has no money. His wife actually stops in the middle of the hand job to celebrate the fact that she won a vase on eBay. And that's Walt's life. Tiny, disappointing, awful, and it's over for him. But now, we end on the C story, when he goes to his car wash job and he's looking at a beautiful girl in a beautiful car. That's the life he never had. He clutches his chest and he falls to the ground. That's our C storyline, which is Walt gonna die? That's how we end the act, on that cliffhanger. Now, when we open on the next act, Walt's getting the news he's going to die. This is what pushes him forward. This is why we have sympathy for him. He's going to die. But he's so disconnected from his own life that he just tells the doctor, I heard, I'm going to die in a year or so, but you've got mustard on your collar. He goes home, and now he does something surprising. He lies to his wife. Skylar asks him, is anything wrong? He says, no, nothing. We're seeing him reveal a new facet of himself we've never seen. He's a liar. But now, back at the car wash, when Bogdan orders him to go out and do wipe downs again, we're seeing him change. He tells Bogdan to go screw himself, knocks everything off the counter, and leaves. Walter is changing, but he's an antihero. Now, what is the definition of an antihero? An antihero is someone who becomes evil for sympathetic reasons. This is why we like him. This is Michael Corleone in The Godfather. This is Harvey Dent in Dark Knight. We have to have sympathetic reasons to like an antihero. We have sympathy for Walt because we've seen that he's going to die. Now, at the end of the act, he calls Hank and he says, Hank, can I come on that ride along? Can I see you bust some drug dealers? Walt is changing. And in Act 3, we open with Walt in the back of Hank's car while Hank makes racist jokes about the people who are about to be busted. Then we see the guys busted, and as we see Hank bust these amphetamine dealers, Walt looks out of the car and he sees from the next house over his former student Jesse jumping out of a window and a naked woman throwing his jeans. This is the D storyline. And the D storyline here is, will Jesse and Walter become co-conspirators? And as we see Walter watch Jesse jump in his car, Walter comes on the license plate and says, Captain Crunch. And he thinks, I am going to follow Jesse around. Jesse flees the scene, and that night Walter shows up at Jesse's house and says to him, you and I are going to cook meth together. And Jesse's like, what, are you kidding me? Come on, Mr. White. You're my high school teacher. You don't want to do that. Walt says, either that or you go to prison because I turn you in. That is the new Walter, the tough Walter, the Walter we're going to see through the entire 7-year run of the show. He is a different guy. And the D storyline question, will Walt and Jesse become friends, is answered, it looks like they're gonna. Now, we end the act not on that, but on a part where it makes the audience stand up and cheer. Walt and Skylar take their son to the mall to get jeans. And as they put these jeans on their disabled son, these 3 big jocks start making fun of the son. Mommy, my big boy pants. They're awful. And Skylar sees it. And she wants Walt to do something about these bullies. But what does he do? He leaves the store like a wimp, forcing Skylar to start to say to the son, okay, son, I'm going to go take care of these guys. But as she does, Walt bursts in the front of the store, walks right up to these 3 guys that are all 3 feet taller than him and says, come on, take your best shot. Come on, take your best shot. Get out of here, you stupid little twits. And these huge guys actually melt away. Walt's suddenly becoming a strong guy, and we're standing up and cheering him. Even Skylar is shocked and a little turned on because this is the new Walter. So we end the act with the B storyline question, will Walt take care of his family? You bet he will. He's tough. He's new. Guys, is he going to become a criminal? Yes, but the secret of great story is to make us empathize with someone who's doing bad things. Walt steps in. Now, in Act 4, we often have a beginning, we often have 2 storylines together, the A and the D. This is often true, and it's true in this story. The A storyline, remember, is will Walt become a badass drug dealer? And look at that. When we watch him in Act 4, he's hustling equipment out of his high school. He's become a thief. Beakers, synthetic stuff, everything. Now we also are watching the D story because Jesse is reluctantly becoming the sorcerer's apprentice, right? That's exactly the relationship they're going to have for the next 7 years. Jesse and Walter are becoming co-conspirators. We're also seeing Walt's genius. Remember, superpower is being misused at the beginning of the show, but he's beginning to use it. He's beginning to use his chemical genius again. We're going to make a product that is synthetically pure. It's going to be perfect. And Jesse's like, nah, I want to make chili. Chili pea is my trademark. We're going to put chili in it. We are going to make a synthetic product that is perfect, Jesse. Shut up. So this reluctant relationship between them is going to go on for 7 years. The D storyline where Walt and Jesse become colleagues is going to resonate through the entire 7 years. They'll fall apart, they'll come back together, but at the very last episode of this show, they are still co-conspirators, right to the end. The other thing you're going to see in Act 4 is this, the most amazing use of the suspense tools you've ever seen. Good news, bad news, ticking clocks, raising stakes. They are used brilliantly by Gilligan. It's part of the reason some people can't watch this show for more than 10 minutes. They have to literally turn it off and then cool down and watch it again. Because the suspense is agonizingly good. And you're going to see all that in Act 4. The other thing you're going to see in Act 4 is that, remember, in a movie there is what I call a BMOC, the 4 times in a movie when the hero is asked to change. In a television show, the hero is asked to change too, but he doesn't much. And since there's 5 acts, there's a BMMOC. For more information on this structure, go to University of Story, look at my Foundations lecture, my TV lecture. This is a pattern that great television shows have. In Act 4, you're going to see both the O point, the obstacle point, the moment when it looks like all is lost, and you're also going to see the climax of the television show where the hero wins. Both of these points are present in one act. That's the brilliance of using a structure of the ABCDE storyline. I know it sounds prissy and mathematical, but it's actually a beautiful way to tell an original story and make it entertaining. You can tell any story you want. You can tell a story about 2 skunks, 2 bisexual skunks. It doesn't matter if you use these tools. Actually, I don't think a bisexual skunk story would work that well, but all right. So anyway, they get a used Winnebago with all the money that Walter has in the world. But when Walter gets out of the credit union with the cash and gives it to Jesse, Jesse says to him, hey, listen, I got to know, just for my own, because what you do affects me. What you do affects me. Have you just gone nuts? It doesn't compute. Why does a guy, I don't know, 60 years old, well, it says 50, how does a 6-year-old guy suddenly just break bad? I mean, have you gone crazy? This affects me. And Walter finally says the critical thing about his core wound. Remember, his core wound is that I'm powerless. That's his core wound. And he says to Jesse the truth right here. He says, I am alive. He's finally feeling powerful. That's the critical thing to realize about Walter. It is also his unsolvable dilemma. Remember, we talked about what that was at the beginning of this lecture. His unsolvable dilemma is that he wants to take care of his family, but the way he's doing it is destroying his family. That is unresolvable. It will never be resolved, not for 7 years. So Jesse goes and gets the Winnebago. We're still in Act 4. They drive out to the desert, and they begin to make this meth. Now, most stories have what I call speed and weed. In a romantic comedy, the weed is real estate and alpha males and building shoe closets and having a guy who can communicate and be sensitive as well as powerful and strong. It's the pleasure you get from a story. In this story, because the hook is how bad will Walter go, and the premise is he's going to make drugs, the weed and speed literally is weed and speed. As they make this drug, the music mounts. Watch this scene, guys. You'll get caught up in it. It's the sorcerer and his assistant as they cook this perfect meth. And the music swells. And Jesse screws up and Walter saves him. And at the end, there is a pan of beautiful sky blue methamphetamine that is the purest meth ever made in the world. And when it's finished, Jesse looks at it and says, you're the goddamn Iron Chef. You're amazing. And Walter says, it's just basic chemistry, but thank you, Jesse. He is using his genius for chemistry, and he is becoming a powerful guy. Still in Act 4, Walter says to Jesse, how do we sell this? And Jesse says, I know just the guy to take it to. And this is where the E-plot kicks in. Because the guy who was busted in the second act, Emilio and Crazy 8, we cut to Jesse walking up to their house, a barking dog that's attacking a dummy, and we start to get danger rising. Because when Jesse tries to sell this drug to Crazy 8 says, hey, where'd you get this? I know you didn't. I know your little dumbass didn't cook it. Where'd you get this? Take me to this guy. We're approaching the all is lost moment of the show. Because as their lowrider, neon yellow gangster car pulls up to the Winnebago where Walter is standing in his underwear with nobody for miles, the two gangsters pull their guns and they prepare to kill Walter and Jesse. That is the low point for Walter. Now remember, what is his superpower? How are we going to see it? And remember what replaces character change in television. Surprise. Because as they prepare to kill them both, ticking clocks, guns, Walter says, wait a minute. I'll teach you my recipe. You let us live, and I'll teach you how to cook. And the villains say, okay. Now Walter hasn't been saved. It's only a temporary reprieve. But as he goes into the RV with both guys' guns pointed at his head, ticking clocks, when the guns go off, the music begins to give us a literal ticking clock sound. Tick, tock, tick, tock. And as we watch Walter create more methamphetamine, we see him pick up a bottle that we've been explained is poison if it's subjected to heat. And as the clocks tick, and one of the villains throws a cigarette out the window, that's another ticking clock. We have 4 simultaneous ticking clocks in the scene. Watch it, it's fabulous. Suddenly Walter throws the red phosphorus into the fire, boom, and a poison blows up in a cloud, and the two gangsters begin to die. Walter jumps out of the RV, slams the door behind him. Good news, bad news. They fire through the door, but then they die. Walt is winning. The A storyline, will become a badass drug dealer? Yes. Will Jesse and him work together? Yes. E storyline, will Walt and Jesse win over Crazy 8 and Emilio? Yes. But it could end here, but it doesn't. Why? Because we need more tension and suspense. Suddenly that cigarette that was thrown out the window catches fire and the entire place starts to burn. Walt has to escape. He gets in the RV. As the music swells, he and Jesse roll through the desert with those two bodies in the back. And guess what? We're back at the cold open. Remember with the RV running through the desert? Walt stopping, getting out. The two bodies in the back, he makes the video confession. He goes to the road, he's got the gun pointed, and now that's where we are. And now we see that siren ticking clock get louder and louder. The cops are coming. Walt's going to lose. Everything's over for him. Then good news. That turns out not to be cops, but the firemen, and they don't care about Walt at all. They go by, flipping his underwear up and down, and he, through sheer amazing genius and luck, has won. The firemen leave. They've killed the two guys. Walt has answered the A storyline question, will you be a badass drug dealer? Hell yes, and I've become a murderer too. And then he vomits, because remember, he's still a weak guy. So in our resolution, we finally wrap up the final storyline, which is, will Walt take care of his family? We see him laundering, literally, the money that he's made. He's taking care of his family financially. And this time, when he and Skylar go to have sex, she suddenly gasps, because, Walter, is that you? He can suddenly be a man there too. So the story ends with this B storyline answered yes, with the A storyline answered yes, with the C storyline answered yes, every storyline answered yes. Walt has become a badass drug dealer and a murderer, and we're going to watch him go further with that for the next 7 years. This is brilliant television because we've set up a hook that we want to watch another 100 episodes to see. And it's a classic, classic thriller. And guys, television is thirsty for thrillers. There are 400 scripted stories now who need stories. Please use the tools I've given you tonight, not only in thrillers, but for every television genre, because they work across the board.